So
all right.
We're just streaming, so bear with me in one moment and we'll start the meeting. Okay, it looks like we're recording and streaming, Chair. It's 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I think it's 8 o'clock and I'd like to welcome you to the East Arts Council's Audit and Governance Committee. I'd like to begin by just reminding people that the local authorities and police and crime panels coronavirus flexibility of local authority and police crime panel meetings, England and Wales, regulations 2020, which came into force on Saturday, the 4th of April 2020, to enable councils to hold remote committee meetings in the COVID-19 pandemic period. This is to ensure local authorities can conduct business during the current public health emergency. This meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee will be held remotely under these regulations via the Zoom application and is being recorded and streamed on YouTube. Thank you. Okay, well, it brings us to the agenda. And the first on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Yes, we received apologies from Councillor Andrew Huggins, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 2 on the agenda is the minutes of the last meeting of the committee, which was held on the 17th of November. Are members happy to confirm the minutes of the meeting, of that meeting? Or not? Are we happy they're a correct record?
Just need a proposer, I think, Councillor Alder.
So I think Councillor Alder was proposing, Councillor Stowe was seconding. Is that okay? Smashing. All those in favour? Yeah, I think we're okay.
Thank you.
Smashing. Thank you very much indeed. Next item is Chairman's announcements, but apart from the sort of the housekeeping point I made earlier, I've got nothing to add to that, so I don't have any Chairman's announcements. Item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any members' declarations? I can't think of anyone anyway. If anything springs to mind during the course of the meeting, perhaps you just let us know. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the first meaningful item on the agenda, which is the SIAS Internal Audit Progress Report, which begins on page 29.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My report provides members with an update on progress made against delivering the Council's internal audit work plan for the year and the outcome of internal audits completed so far. It also contains details of changes made to the programme since my last progress report to the committee and provides a status update on the high priority audit recommendations that are not yet fully implemented. So in terms of work programme delivery, the table at the bottom of page 31 shows the audits that have been finalised to date. In addition to those, a further 3 audits have been finalised since my committee report was written. These audits are payroll, housing benefits and car parking. You'll also see a further table over the page shows nearly all the programme audits are now being worked on or have been finished, and the remaining audits in the programme have staff resource allocated to them for a scheduled start later this month. Moving on to paragraph 2.4, that explains that with management agreement we have deferred a further 3 audits this year because the subject matter was not yet ready for audit. However, since writing my report, it has been agreed that we will carry out an audit of commercial rents instead and also map the Council's cash system interfaces.
This is... Just say that one again, that last one? Sorry, forgive me for interrupting. What was that last one you mentioned? Was it mapping?
The cash system interfaces.
What would you do there? Was it just is that an audit, or is that what would you do? What would you do with that?
So at Stephen's request, we've been asked to map those interfaces to just improve the knowledge management of those systems with a view to potentially transforming the arrangements as part of change management processes.
And will we see the results of that review will it be noted in your next report, I suppose, or whenever?
It will be noted. I mean, it won't be a conventional piece of internal audit work where we're providing assurance and a written report. We'll be providing Stephen and his colleagues with documentation which show what those interfaces are and what the workflows with the various systems are as well.
Because normally, you know, on your reports, you normally circulate those to us, don't you, outside of this meeting, at these meetings, we get them by email, don't we? Was that something we would receive in the same way?
No, where we're giving an assurance opinion and issuing an audit report, you're quite right, members would receive copies of all of those as a matter of routine. But this isn't a piece of conventional audit work, it's a piece of consultancy work in many respects. I mean, we can provide summary feedback in the next progress report or when the work is completed on what the outcome was, but we won't be providing members with an assurance opinion in the usual way. It's not a piece of assurance work.
Thank you.
Yes, so those changes, that's fairly typical of events across most SciS partners in recent months, where essentially because of the pandemic, we've had to defer or even cancel a number of planned audits and produce adjusted programs of work. With this in mind, my planning arrangements for 21-22 next year, they'll assume the need for a flexible strategy with our planning arrangements. Certainly, at least for the first 6 months of the new financial year, we'll in effect be producing 2 6-month plans, the first one having that degree of flexibility in it. That should be coming to the committee at the March meeting. Moving on to page 37, which provides details of the high priority recommendations not yet fully implemented. You can see that there are just the 2 recommendations relating to historic IT audits, and these are recognised as having infrastructure dependencies. Members may recall the relevant managers discussed this with them at it was last July's meeting actually. But the latest management comments do confirm work is in progress, and I hope members will be reassured these recommendations will continue to be monitored through my usual progress reports to you and until such time as they're fully implemented. That essentially concludes my report. Thank you, Chair. Subject to any questions, should there be any.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any questions from members? Councillor Stowe, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted a bit of clarification. Or maybe I got myself lost a bit, but on page 31, we talk about the waste contract not being assessed. But then on page 41, you talk about the waste contract follow-up, final report issued. So can you open that up a bit more for me, please?
Yes, certainly. The table on page 31 is indeed confirming that the audit has been finished. Where it's saying not assessed, that means because it's a piece of follow-up work, we're not giving an audit opinion on it. We're simply following up the audit that was previously carried out and that members would have seen on a previous occasion. So that's why we've not given an assurance opinion.
Okay, that answers your question, Councillor Stowe. Great, thank you. Any other questions from members? On the
Councillor Alder's got a hand up there, sorry, Chair.
Oh, do beg your pardon, Councillor Alder, sorry. You have a question, Councillor Alder?
You're muted currently, Councillor Alder.
You're muted.
Right. The numbers on my pages don't seem to relate to anything we've been talking about, but I do have a question, and it concerned the complete disaster with IT. And I'm not sure if that's coming up, whether I've passed it or not, because I'm trying to follow on two computers. But it talks about how long the recovery period could take, but it doesn't give any sort of time frame. So how long is, don't know.
If I could answer that, Chair, yes, I'd have to obtain an answer from the service managers. I can do that and circulate a response to members by email if that's acceptable.
Yes, thank you. It's just that, you know, we don't know. People could be 6 months, 2 minutes, or next year. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask the table under para 2.2, where it talks about the final reports that were issued in 2020-2021, information management received a limited assurance, and there was one high priority recommendation. I guess we can assume that that's been dealt with. It doesn't appear on the outstanding list, so I guess it must have been.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. A more general point, in terms of the number of internal audit days that's been allocated to the council, you know, are there any plans to reduce that further? Do you know? Because it's been kind of trending down, isn't it, over the last few years? I think the last time we talked about this formally, you know, we were kind of expressed a little bit of concern about the trend that was happening. Are there any more plans to reduce days further? Do you know?
Yes, there are. Contractually, the council entered into a phased arrangement with SIAS whereby 20 audit days were taken off the total number for successive years. The audit programme for 21-22 will be for 300 days, which is 20 less than the current year. But that is the final planned reduction at this point in time.
And there aren't any, you're not aware of any further plans to reduce this number?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay. And if there were, then I guess we obviously we'd be informed about that, I dare say, if there were plans. Suppose.
Yes, that's right.
Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Alder?
Question.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you. Yes, what I'm concerned about is, are we confident that the proper oversight of expenditure against services going forward? You know, reduce audit days. I want to know that the money we're spending is going to be proper oversight of that against budgets. Can we be confident that that will happen? Thank you.
I can answer that question in part, insofar as internal audit is part of the council's overall control framework. There are other sources of assurance available to members, such as the external audit arrangements, and also the routine systems of management, which also provide you with assurance. I think members have got to be satisfied, perhaps, that the overall assurance arrangements provides them with the levels of assurance that they wish, and provided they're happy with that, then that's fine. If not, you probably need to talk to the relevant officers and agree what your actual appetite for assurance is.
I wondered if Stephen had an opinion on this.
I'm just wondering where Councillor Alder thinks there's a problem, or if there is a problem, but I'm not aware there's a problem. And internal audit isn't, after all, isn't a bloodhound, it's a watchdog, in the same way that external audit is. And there's a whole assurance framework around management practices, governance, policies, financial regulations, as well as audit. And within an overall governance framework, which, if you mapped it out, would be, I think, considerable in the public sector about making sure that money's spent in the way it should be. I mean, to the extent even that we have to publish all of our spending online for this, the so-called armchair auditors as well, is further transparency. I'm struggling to understand where Council Audit thinks is a problem.
Councillor Alder, did you want to come back on that? I'm not convinced that Council necessarily thought there was a problem. I think she was wondering if there might be, or a potential one maybe. Councillor Alder, did you want to mention anything further on this?
No, I just need to be confident that we're keeping a good eye on expenses against budget heads. Thank you. I'm sure you are. Just to flag it up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Indeed, Councillor, as you do, because you see the same quarterly monitoring report that the executives see. So you are part of the assurance and governance framework. So,
and if I could add, Chairman, there is also the annual governance statement, which provides various opinions on the state of the council's assurance framework. Members can also take assurance from that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Okay, well, I think we, Councillor Corp, beg your pardon, you've got a question. Do beg your pardon.
Yes, thank you. It's a question that was triggered actually by the discussion we had following Councillor Alder's previous comments. So I'm just looking at the kind of historical record of some of the high priority recommendations. So page 3940, for example, where just looking through the history of the comments from management, I see that there are a block of 2 or 3 updates, which read a verbal update will be provided at the committee meeting, which is obviously fine at the time, but sitting from now in the present and kind of trying to look back and piece together what the development of the actions have been, actually having a verbal update will be provided at the meeting is not actually terribly helpful to understand what happened at that time. So in effect, we now have like a 6-month kind of missing entry in some of these. So I wonder if maybe in future we could maybe try and avoid having these kind of verbal update entries and either kind of fill in what was said or ideally have a kind of short update already written in to avoid this situation. Thank you.
Certainly, Chairman, we can endeavour to incorporate that in the future.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll always seek to obtain a written update if I can. It's not always possible, but
or maybe if there are verbal updates, maybe you could just put a little 2 or 3 lines summary of what the verbal update was on this schedule, maybe.
Okay.
Perhaps that would. I mean, I don't think we should sort of preclude you from making verbal updates if you really have to. But maybe you could just put verbal update was given and it was a sentence or something or so, just confirming what it was. Maybe. Yeah, but it's a good point, Councillor Corker. It is a good point. So it gives us a fuller picture.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions, we go back to the recommendation. So the recommendations are to note the internal audit progress report, to approve changes to the internal audit plan as at the 18th December 2020, and to note the status of critical and higher priority recommendations. So I don't think we've got it. I think I'll be happy to approve those recommendations on block. Yeah, Councillor Corb is proposing and Councillor Alder seconding. All in favour? Yeah, that's carried. Thank you. So thank you very much indeed for your report. You're welcome to stay. I don't know if you are staying or if not, you're welcome to.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, that brings us on to the next item, which is the receipt of the external auditors and an audit letter, beginning on page 43. Who's talking to this one?
That'll be myself and Mohammed, Chair.
Oh, hello.
Good evening. Good evening to members of
How
the
are you?
committee. We're good, thank you. And you?
Very well indeed, thank you. Very well.
I'm going to Nazir is going to just briefly introduce you to the letter, and then I was going to pick up the fees page and then the forward look to 2021. So over to Nazir.
Right, thanks, Suresh. So we issued our detailed audit results report back in September, and after that we issued our audit opinion on 30th November within the time frame. So today we are just presenting our annual audit letter, which is in continuation from the results report, but this is just a summary of high-level summary for the members. This report just summarizes the conclusions from audit risks identified in results report, and if I take it to page 46, so page 46 is the executive summary, which summarizes the conclusions. And if you could look at there are no matters of significance which we have reported. So it was a clean audit opinion we issued on 30th November. So moving on to page 51. So page 51 is the same summary which we reported back in September. So in September, we outlined in detail our audit approach for identified risk and the conclusions as well. So over here, we are just summarizing what the conclusion for each risk. So just wanted to highlight a few things over here. So back in September, our work on valuation was still in progress. And subsequently, we concluded and we issued the audit opinion in November. We included an emphasis of matter paragraph in relation to the valuation uncertainties for COVID-19. And our going concern work was also in progress back in September, which we concluded subsequently. So page 52.
Can I just ask you, for the emphasis of matter? Were there a number of these such sort of emphasis of matters across various councils' audit reports in relation to COVID?
Yeah.
We weren't sort of unusual in that respect.
That's right, yeah, because if you remember, the valuer, or your valuer, like everyone's valuer, was in effect guided by the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, RICS, to include those caveats in virtually all valuation reports. So if there was a council with a significant level of property that was impacted by that valuation uncertainty, then typically the auditor then would include that emphasis of matter paragraph.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So moving on to page 52. So page 52 is just a summary of materiality we have used. So there is no change in compared to the numbers we reported back in September. Page 54 is about value for money. Again, when we reported our results back in September, we concluded our work for value for money. So there is no subsequent change since then. So this one is just a summary in continuation from September audit results report. So I will hand off to Suresh to continue further.
Yeah, so just two things then from me. One, on the audit fees, which I'm sure you've spotted on your page 61. So when we reported back in September, and actually in our audit plan, we had highlighted certain areas where there would be additional work. That was largely around the value for money conclusion and then the group consolidation. Hence the reason why we had a planned fee in relation to those in the plan. And then subsequent to the audit planning, given the impact of COVID-19 on your accounts and the audit, we've then included additional work around the going concern disclosure, asset valuations, as Nazir referred to, and also then our own internal consultations to ensure that things like the emphasis of matter paragraph, for example, were being disclosed appropriately. Since concluding the audit, we have finalised those fees. We've shared a detailed analysis of those fees in terms of hours, grades of staff, and the actual work carried out to the head of strategic finance and property, and we have agreed those fees. Those fees now go to PSAA for their final approval. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight on your page 58 and 59, we just include a couple of things in terms of changes that are coming on the, well, there are changes now are in place for 2021. The first one is the audit code actually changes. So the National Audit Office revises its code of audit practice every 5 years, and that is now happened for 2021 onwards. And we've just pulled out there the main change, which is around value for money. And they've slightly changed the kind of criteria that we report against, but the bigger change is how we report that. So for this year, we will provide you not just a kind of binary conclusion that sits in our audit opinion, but an actual commentary against those three criteria. So a bit more narrative to support an overall view on your arrangements to support value for money. And then the second thing there is just once again highlighting the changes to the leasing standard, which will be applying now from 21-22. It keeps getting put back, but we understand that is now going to happen in 21-22. So there will be a requirement on the authority to, well, as it has done already, to be fair, to prepare in advance of accounting for that new standard. And then finally, it's not in the letter, but I just wanted to highlight that timetable wise for 2021, you may have seen that MHCLG responded to the Redmond review but just before Christmas, and one of the things that it suggested, or one of the things that it proposed, was it would move the reporting date for you to publish your audited accounts to the 30th of September for 2021. But then on Friday, they issued another consultation on setting a date for your draft accounts to be published, and that date was going to be the 1st of August, which then seems to suggest that there's a 2-month period when auditors will be auditing the accounts of local authorities, which is clearly unrealistic. So, we, and along with other firms, I'm sure will be responding to that consultation to suggest that reporting deadline of the 30th of September needs to move back to a later date, given last year it was 30th of November and only half of authorities were able to issue their published accounts by that date. So I suppose I'm just telling you to be a bit watch this space in respect of the timetable. We have actually got an indicative timetable which we'll be sharing with Stephen and his team, which does allow us to complete the work by the end of September. But we're just highlighting that for the sector as a whole, we do think that 30th of September isn't realistic. And I've got a meeting along with colleagues, with Stephen and his colleagues across Hertfordshire, to discuss the kind of wider timetable across the county area.
Okay. And actually, we're on the subject of timetable in terms of your firm's sort of issues, if you like, with meeting sort of timetables. Have you taken other steps you've taken, sort of made some changes to allow you to be more comfortable in that department?
We have made changes, but it's fair to say that some of those changes will take a few years to bed in. So where we've obviously recruited more junior staff and training them up to make sure they've got the relevant expertise, that it's going to take a couple of years for that to bear fruit. But we have recruited more people. But I think the timetables, the way they are at the moment, still present a pressure on auditors, and in fairness to local authorities, to prepare accounts, good supporting working papers, and clearly operate in an environment where we're still working remotely, which does have its benefits clearly in terms of how we can audit, but does then create some delays in how quickly we can both work through certain issues as they arise.
I think last year you did quite a bit of work in advance, didn't you? Sort of the year end maybe, or you got some stuff done early on in the process.
We did, yeah, we did.
Do you think you'll be doing that again this time?
Well, it depends on, like I say, some of the timetable. There is a backlog we've still got for 19-20 audits that we are clearing. So
Right.
we're working through how best to make best use of the resources that we've got.
Sure. So you'll be agreeing sort of timelines with Stephen and his team,
Yeah.
I guess, over the next.
Yeah.
So Stephen, you're just awaiting sort of clarification about how the timetable is going to run, I suppose.
Yes, Chairman, because there are a number of we're juggling a number of balls at the same time because the housing benefit subsidy audit needs to be done, and then we are rapidly approaching the point where it's we're starting to close down and the interim work timetable in, etc., etc. So yes, we're due some discussions about how it's all going to work together. And I know colleagues in Hertfordshire, as I said at the Joint Scrutiny Committee meeting, there are only 2 councils in Hertfordshire who have audit opinions, ourselves and St Albans. And so obviously there are a number of issues going on at other local authorities when they're wondering when they're going to get their opinion, etc., etc. So I think it's fair to say that the audit market is more or less imploded, really. And it's it's all very well the government saying eventually, as a response to Redmond, that they want to go back to June and July as sort of like the reporting period. But I just think it's wholly unrealistic, because I just don't think the audit firms can deal with it in that timescale. And I've yet to meet the concerned armchair auditor who's desperately waiting for the state statement of accounts, to be honest.
Yeah. Yes. In terms of the work that needs, or the new amount of work that needs to be done on value for money and the leases piece of work, do you think that's going to cause you much of a problem? or not a problem, it's the wrong word, more additional work, I should say.
So in terms of the value for money, excuse me, in terms of the value for money changes to the code, it's probably less likely to be additional work in respect of work that we do in the year around value for money. It's more about the reporting side of things. So in your audit opinion and your 1920 accounts, for example, you'll have a paragraph which kind of virtually says, we've got nothing to report on value for money. Under this new arrangement, we'll probably have a couple of pages of narrative commentary on value for money. So it's more about that side of things than the actual the work that underpins that. Probably with the same level of just more reporting.
And would that impact on your fee, for instance? Would your fee be different because you maybe have to do a bit more work around that?
And we've fed that back to the NAO already and PSAA.
Right. Okay.
And then on the leases, it kind of depends on obviously the number and complexity of leases that the council has got, the change in accounting treatment that it might need to apply, etc. Sure.
Stephen, if you had any thoughts about the leases piece, whether that's going to cause you any sort of additional or much additional work?
I know Alison in my team is on the case on the leases. I haven't had I cast an eye over yet. It's one of those things that I will get to very shortly.
Sure.
There's always issues when you have these accounting treatment changes, interpretation and professional judgment, and I'm sure we'll have some robust discussions between ourselves and EY during the course of this, as indeed local authorities and their external auditors will across the piece, I feel sure.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Well, lastly, I guess we wouldn't be a complete discussion if we weren't going to talk about fees. And obviously, you've talked about that, and you've gone through the various areas, and you've told it's gone through the PSAA. I mean, if the PSAA say fine, it's okay to pay, we just got to pay it, haven't we?
That is the process, yes, Chair.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, sir. That's brilliant. And thank you. Are there any questions on the auditor's letter? I mean, a lot of this we already knew anyway, didn't we? I guess it's just it's useful to have it in one place. Are there any other questions? I can't see any hands up. So in the absence of any questions, I'll be just happy to receive the letter. Do we need to vote on this? Forgive me.
No, this is just a receipt, Chair.
Okay, we're very happy to receive it. Thank you very much indeed for your presentation, Anson Young, and you're very welcome to stay or to go as you see fit. Thank you. Serge, thanks ever so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye now. Thank you. Okay, that brings us on to investment strategy, which was marked to follow, and I think it's a supplementary agenda item. Who's going to talk to this one? Is that Steve? Stephen, are you doing this one?
I can introduce it quickly if you like.
Oh, Jeff, lovely. Okay.
All right. Just to say that the council is required to provide 3 Treasury reports each year, which this is the first, being the forward-looking report for the next financial year. Covers our capital plans, including our prudential indicators, our minimum revenue provision policy, and our treasury management and investment strategies. Document is presented to you tonight for review and comment.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay. And a lot of it, the type's quite small as well, so it's quite a big document. So this is the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and the Investment Strategy 21-22. Thank you very much indeed. Are there any points anyone would like to make, or questions, points of clarification? Well, I've got one on, it's para 1.4 training, and it talks about the very fairly recent member training there has been. Are there any more plans for more member training? Do we know? I mean, I think we've had some fairly recent stuff in November and December. I just wonder when the next sort of member training would be. And also, you mentioned about training needs for treasury management officers are periodically reviewed. I wonder if anyone could give us any colour, sort of the sorts of training that officers get in this regard, how often that happens.
Well, the first thing that officers will be trained in is operation of the Public Works Loans Board, because it's been 20-something years since the council last accessed the Public Works Loans Board. So I'll be talking them through how you actually do that, needed in place, and the little nuances to watch out for. For example, if you ask for £1 million, you don't actually get £1 million because they deduct their dealing fees off the top of it. So it's little nuances like that that you need to be aware of that we'll be doing with them. I'll also be, for members to say what training they want, I'll also be going through with the staff where they do have training needs and looking at that sort of stuff, of getting a package together to make sure that they're comfortable and happy with the different sort of capital accounting that they're just not used to. So the debt management stuff, the MRP, etc., etc. So I had to do a quick teaching on MRP, for example. So it's those sort of areas where they've just not had exposure to it in the last 20 years to bring their skills right up to where they should be.
Okay, thank you. On
I think Lorraine wanted to come in there, Chair. Scrutiny.
Oh, beg your pardon. Yes, please do. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman, just to supplement what Stephen mentioned, as you're probably aware, we also have a member development training group, a member development group, which meets quarterly. And I work with Councillor Rutland Barsby to consider how we can move forward on members training. We are picking up some aspects of the recommendations that came out of the review of scrutiny, and I'm in the process of liaising with linked services regarding the provision of some further scrutiny training, which will pick up on some of the recommendations from the review that was took place last year. There's also going to be the suggestion in a report I put together to members regarding the development of perhaps a competency framework, which will look at members' long-term needs rather than on a sort of an ad hoc basis. Oh, yes. So we're hoping that provides a better focus, so we can look at it from an overarching viewpoint to see what comes out in terms of what the consensus of members' needs, supplemented by a training questionnaire as well.
Okay, that sounds interesting. When do you think? Have we got a time frame for that?
Well, the next member development group is on the 25th of February. I'll be sending out an email tomorrow, and I'm just putting out some feelers tomorrow. So I haven't heard back from Link Services yet on the scrutiny refresher training and issues that will pick up on the recommendations, because we want it tailored to meet some of the recommendations, or to address some of the recommendations that came out of that review. So it'll take a little bit. I don't anticipate over the next month or so. I would think at least a couple of months before that training can be provided.
Okay, thank you. That's useful to know. Thank you. Thank you. I'll just ask on the moving on the section 2 capital prudential indicators. So I think it's the top of page 8 of the report. The figure on the left hand side, the capital expenditure for 1920 is 4.8. It says 4.8. But if you see this at the top of page 8 of the report, I don't know if you can see that. I wonder whether it shouldn't be 3.5, should it, that number? I might be wrong, but I just thought I'd ask the question. If you can see,
I haven't got anything. What do you mean by page 8 of the report? Do you mean page 8 of the actual strategy?
Yeah, so it's section 2, the capital prudential indicators, and you've got paragraph 2.1, which is capital expenditure, and on that page there are 2 tables, aren't there? On that page, and in the following page there's a table at the top of the page, which is commercial activities, non-financial investments. That table. And yep. it's got the capital expenditure for 1920 as 4.8 million. Just wanted to check whether that should.
The financing part, yes. That's the net financing need, 4.5. There's 10.8 of expenditure. The 4.5 of it wasn't financed from revenue or receipts or grants. Therefore, ergo, it's borrowing. The 10.8 was financed by 8 and 2.8, which leaves 4.5 outstanding.
It's the next table where it's got capital expenditure for commercial activities, non-financial investments, 4.8.
4.8 is just off the 4. Of the 8, 4.8 of it is on commercial activities.
Yeah,
non-financial investment.
I just wanted to, if you're happy it's 4, but I wasn't sure if it should be 3.5. Anyway.
No, it's 4. No, it's 4.8.
Oh, fine. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. I think under that table we talk about the you're looking to get some council's opinion on council's housing, bonding for the council's housing. That was, we talked about that in the earlier meeting, didn't we? And you've told us roughly when you're thinking of getting at that. So that's done. I don't think I had anything else actually. Are there any other points? I didn't have any other questions on this. I mean, I thought it was a very thorough report. No, I didn't have any other questions. So if there aren't any other questions or points, the recommendation is, if you go back to the beginning of this report, is that review and comment on the Treasury Management and Annual Investment Strategy 21-22. Well, we've reviewed it and we've had a couple of questions, but that's about it, I think. So is that all we need to do, Will? We don't need to vote on this one, do we?
Yeah, no vote needed here, Chair.
So we've just reviewed it and we've made some comments on it. So thank you very much indeed, Stephen, and your team for the very thorough report. Thank you. So we're now on the capital strategy minimum revenue position policy. I think, again, that was marked to follow. Stephen, are you going to, or is Jeff going to talk to this one?
I don't mind. Gives me the chance to speak.
Go on then.
Okay, the need for the council to produce an annual capital strategy was introduced following the strengthening of guidance from both the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy and the government. It reinforced the wisdom of having a published capital and treasury management strategy, which of course it just looks at to manage and control these areas. Capital strategy is useful as a high-level document in any case, as it pulls together and considers a range of both external and internal influences. As such, it helps demonstrate a golden thread running through and linking our activities to ensure they're coordinated and consistent. Anyway, I hand over to you for your comment and review.
Thank you. Members, are there any comments on the capital strategy and the minimum revenue provision policy? I mean, has this, for instance, has this evolved, let's say, compared to last year? I mean, I guess it's the things do evolve, but are there any material changes compared to last year? When this was last year.
For that, I will have to hand back to Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
I may. Yeah.
Thank you.
In terms of material changes, obviously last year you didn't need to have a minimum revenue provision policy because your capital financing requirement was very firmly negative and there was no way it was going to go positive. This year there's a minimum revenue provision policy, and also in terms of influences, the effect of climate change is obviously now a major influence in the capital programme as well, so that's included. Other than that, there's not that many changes from last year. Now, other than I've made the font bigger, and I heard your comments about the previous report, I will make the font bigger in that as well. Make the font bigger in the tables. You should have seen the state of the tables before I changed them, so it was just a pressure of time. I will make sure that for the executive meeting, that report has been reformatted properly.
Thank you. Okay, I can't see any questions. I didn't have any points on the capital strategy. So again, I think we were just reviewing. We can say that we've reviewed it. We don't need to vote on it.
Right, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. That brings us on to item 9, which is the work programme, beginning on page 63. Lorraine, are you going to talk to this one? Thank you.
Just try and find it, Chairman. Yes, this is your usual consolidated work programme, Chairman, which looks at both the work of your committee and also of the and scrutiny committee. Yeah, not an awful lot to add, really. We've touched very briefly in terms of what's coming up in training on scrutiny to pick up some of the recommendations that came out of the review. And again, as I say, that training will happen in the next couple of months or so, which hopefully will, as I say, address some of the comments that came out of the review. I've got nothing else to add other than to draw members' attention to what's coming to the March meeting in 16th of March 2021. Again, more regulatory in terms of form and function.
Sure. Are there what are we? Forgive me if I missed it. I think sort of governance items that we should be thinking about, and also we're going to look at the Constitution. I think we're going to establish a working group. Has that moved forward, James?
Yeah, so I've been working alongside the Democratic Services Manager, Katie, in sort of trying to, I think you recall last time, Chairman, that we were stuck a little bit because we needed the group leaders to suggest some people.
Yeah.
So we have had some people suggested from a couple of the parties. We're just waiting for a few more to come forward from the other parties. Once they're in place, we can set up that working group to sort of start looking at the Constitution, and yeah, then the officer working group can then obviously receive any recommendations from that group as well to factor into it. So Katie is going to be chasing that up later, sort of tomorrow or Friday, I think, and then hopefully we'll have something a bit more concrete to report back on after that.
Okay. Are there any other sort of governance-related matters that we should be thinking about over the coming sort of calendar year, almost, rather than the next few meetings anyway?
I think you'll no, actually, I'm thinking more about ONS really than A&G, but no, there's nothing that springs to mind. I can have a little bit of a brainstorm about it and come back to you outside of the meeting if you like, Councillor Pope, and then you can factor it in if there is.
Yeah, that'd be great if you don't mind. I don't know if anyone else has got any thoughts about the work programme and what maybe should be included that hasn't been, or any other comments really. I mean, it looks fine to me. I think it's particularly the items for the next meeting, for instance. I think, as Lorraine alluded to earlier, really, I think we're kind of constrained a little bit by what we have to look at, and so I think the things here are what you probably expect us to be doing around this time of year. So apart from the governance aspect of things, like the working group on the Constitution and any other things we can kind of think of, I thought the work programme was fine. I don't know if anyone else was happy with that. I think it looks like everybody is. So the recommendation is, I think the two recommendations are that the main agenda items for the next meeting are agreed, which I think we're probably happy with, and B, that the proposed consolidated work programme in Appendix A in relation to audit governance matters be agreed. Well, I don't know if we're happy with that, but certainly I am, subject to any discussions that I might have with James on anything related to governance, really. So subject to that, I'll be happy with the two recommendations. If anyone would be happy to propose. Can't see anyone.
Chairman.
Oh, Constable Booth is proposing. Has everyone got a seconder? Can't see if we have.
Councillor Cole, I think, has got his hand there.
Oh, Councillor Cole, brilliant. We've got a proposal and a second. All those in favour of accepting those two recommendations, or taking it? I think that's carried. Thank you. Brilliant. In which case, then, I'm not aware of any items that are urgent.